Hello, I'm Taj, digitally known as Tropic Vibes, the host of Nifty Business, where we highlight NFTs and explore Web 3.0 as we move from pure speculation to creating real-world value. Facebook's parent company Meta is having a rough year. There has been a user decline for the first time in their history, and revenues are falling. That has never happened before at Facebook. The experts on Wall Street are losing faith in the company and often criticize the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, and his ability to run the company. Today, we're going to discuss why I believe his strongest critics have short-term thinking and how this exposes the Achilles heel of a DAO. Although Meta is not a DAO, it is a corporation, I think there is a lesson to learn here. Of course, in this market, everything is down, but Facebook has taken a beating. It is outpacing the S&P 500 and the stock market as a whole. It is down 57% since last year. And just to give you a little comparison as to some other tech stocks that's sort of in the same league, Microsoft is down 14%. Google, that parent company, which is Alphabet, is down 25%. Amazon, 27%. So Facebook's, or Meta's, I should say, 57% down is really serious. And their woes include just negative opinion from public. I mean, everything has been just thrown at them from the Cambridge Analytica leak. That was when all the information was leaked and there was all the criticism about information just being sold on the open market through these apps. And of course, the election, the way they handled that, there was a lot of rumors about various overseas groups favoring one party or the other, but they actually came out that there was actually support for both parties. They just want to have anger and people fighting at each other. It's just been pretty crazy for Facebook. Then there was all that fake news. They were having a lot of issues with people putting up articles about the election, articles about wars, even conspiracy theories, like you name it. And it doesn't matter which side you're on, there is fake news on both sides. Whether you're far left or you're far right, there's a lot of criticism going around. And then people were just angry politically as far as neighbors and friends and people that they thought leaned one way. Well, then they start to post about the election and all this stuff that was going on that I just mentioned, and it just divided people even more. So because of this, people were leaving Facebook. Some people were just deleting their account or just not logging in, and that's why there was such a decline in users, and that has never happened before. In addition to that, millennials and younger generations favor TikTok and other applications. They don't want anything to do with the quote-unquote old people on Facebook. And that is how they had falling revenues for the very first time. But guess what? There was even something that made it even worse. Apple, when they did their privacy updates, it made it difficult for the tracking and the software that was being used for their ads. And of course, ads is what built the house. That is how they're paying their bills, making all of their revenue for the most part is through advertising. So Apple updating that, and of course that is the number one selling smartphone in the world is the iPhone. So in order to track all of this information for all of those ads to work properly, when Apple updated that, guess what? They threw a wrench in all the gears and everything was not working as to plan. But Zuck has taken a lot of criticism through the years. He had to go to Congress and really explain all that data leaking and all of that. And it was like a politician speaking to a politician. There was a lot of funny memes about that. You know, Congress was up there asking him questions and he was answering them back just like a politician. And it was pretty funny to me. But at the end of the day, people always criticized him for being way too powerful and, of course, way too rich. And not as much as before, but even his age. They used to say he's way too young to have this much power. But either way, they'll find something to criticize him. But now the big thing is that they're saying he is way too obsessed with the metaverse. Of course, they changed the name of the parent company from Facebook over to Meta. They tried to launch their own stablecoin as far as a cryptocurrency. They have the Oculus VR headsets. And now they have that digital marketplace on both Facebook and Instagram. But here's what I think is happening right now. All those critics that are saying all this stuff about Mark and saying that Facebook has really lost their way and it's a company in decline and causing it to fall 57%, I think it is a factor of short-term thinking. And just to give you some examples of some short-term thinking, remember back in the day, well, I shouldn't even say remember because I'm an 86 baby, so when we're actually talking about the 70s and the early 80s when there were these huge gas-guzzling cars and the price of gas just went through the roof, and that's when all of these Japanese cars start to come in with their lawnmower engines, as they were called back in the 80s, and they were fuel efficient, and that's why big American car companies started to struggle for the very first time. And then again in the mid-2000s when those big, massive SUVs, Hummers and Escalades and everything were just like the status symbol. Well, then when gas prices went through the roof, the economy wasn't doing so well. Guess what ends up happening? Well, that just paved the way for all of these electric vehicles that we now do see. Or if you look at Nintendo, the 80s and 90s, it was the king of the video game world. But guess what? They were obsessed and fixated on cartridge games, mainly because they did not want to adopt CD technology because it was too easy to burn, copy, and pirate. So they wanted to really keep that stranglehold on the industry that they had. Just like the American car companies, they didn't want to change because they were too profitable in their current position. Then there was Blockbuster, the king of video rentals. They even had the opportunity to buy Netflix. However, they turned it down. And well, I can't even say they lived to regret it because they went bankrupt. How about AOL? Once upon a time, that was the #1 internet service provider. During the 90s and early 2000s, you'd get all those CDs and discs and getting the free trial and accounts to set up on AOL, and that was dial-up modems. However, they did not really position themselves for broadband internet, cable, DSL, and high speed. Instead, they purchased media companies and even merged with Time Warner. However, they should have been focusing on getting to the broadband game because now AOL is a shell of itself being kicked around as a content hub, and now is it a part of Yahoo. And Yahoo is another one, completely fell off of the top of the tech world, and now it's just a collection of content struggling to maintain relevancy in 2022. How about Windows Phone and Blackberries? So focused on the corporate enterprise that they completely ignored the consumer. There's a world famous video of Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft at the time, laughing at the iPhone. Well, that didn't go so well because right now, who has Windows Phone? By the way, just a side note, I was a huge fan of the Windows 7 and 8 phone, but that's neither here nor there. Most people have never even used it. So Meta spending $10 billion on the metaverse on this year alone has a lot of people upset. They say they are breaking the 80-20 rule, meaning that 20% of their focus is creating 80% of their revenue. So why not double down there? In these hard times, rather than spending $10 billion into this metaverse that is bringing in 20%, I shouldn't even say 20%. It's probably bringing 1% or less of their entire revenue. Why spend so much money? That is why they're so upset. And rolling out these digital collectibles and all this headwear stuff that is not even catching on. And the latest one that they released is $1,500, extremely highly priced. The failed cryptocurrency, which is called the Libra coin, which is a stable coin. I mean, all of these headlines being made in Web3. And guess what? It is not going to the bottom line because remember, this is the house that was built by ads. So why not focus all those $10 billion into the ads platform? That's why people are saying. Not to mention, they could spend a lot of that money on PR and just trying to restore the company's public image. Because of this, I've even seen an article today. They were calling for him stepping down as CEO. Now, first of all, I don't think that's even going to happen. I think if they could fire him, they probably will. But the last I heard, the way he has everything structured, it basically makes it very impossible to replace him, but I don't know exactly. I am assuming he probably looked to see what happened to Steve Jobs and Apple back in the day, saw how they forced him out even though he founded the company, and sided with the CEO that he brought into the company, only to see the thing ran into the ground. And then they had to basically buy out his new company in order to get him back into Apple to rise it to where we know it is today. But going back to this whole thing that I said, I think this is a cautionary tale for DAOs. Now, you might be saying, well, what did all of that I just say have anything to do with DAOs? Sometimes the best course may be the least popular one. And just to give a quick illustration, just imagine parents giving a poll to their children as to what's going to be for dinner. There would be Skittles, M&Ms, Twix, you name it. That was what would be for dinner. Because generally speaking, people have short-term thinking and they have their own self-interest in mind. Because kids, they definitely want that quick high of that sugar, having a very good time with their snacks and what have you, but they're not thinking about the long-term effects, gaining weight, possible diabetes, all those other things that could come with that, having Skittles and M&Ms and those things for breakfast and lunch and dinner. And that's why parents are there to make the unpopular decision to make things run smoothly, they're having a healthy meal, and so forth. And luckily, parents don't have to run for re-election every 4 years. In theory, they're sovereign for 18 years on the throne. Because, of course, at that time, that's when people normally either go to college or think they're too big to stay under their parents' rule anymore. They end up leaving. But I said all of this to say this. Sometimes an unpopular decision has to be made. And I think the heat in the kitchen is going to get very hot right now for Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call them. And I expect them to be in the news quite often in the upcoming months, especially if this recession really starts to go down and they start losing even more users. I expect Mark Zuckerberg to be leading off very many stories. But hey, who knows? What are your thoughts on all this? I know a lot of focus is being put on the metaverse, even changing their name to Meta. But do you think he is just dedicating way too much to this? Do you think they're just following the hype and trying to really dominate Web3, even though they're not even a major player at this point? What exactly are your thoughts on this? Everything that I said. Love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to reach out to me at Tropic Vibes on Twitter, or my contact information is in the show notes. But as usual, I just want to thank you for taking time to listen to this as we're learning and building Web3 together. So until next time, later. The Nifty Business Arrow is not investment advice. It provides insights and information within the space. As with anything, please do your own research before making a decision whether you're making an investment or a purchase.